Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Army's Bloggers Roundtable for Wednesday, December 7th, 2011. My name is Staff Sergeant Dale Sweetenham with the Army's Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, and I will be moderating our call today. A quick note to our bloggers on the line today. Please remember to clearly state your name and blog or organization in advance of your question, and then respect our guest time, keeping questions succinct and to the point. We have two callers on the line. We have one in the room, so I'll make sure to identify you one by one to ask questions, and then we'll definitely have time for a round of follow-up questions. Today, our guest is Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major Raymond F. Chandler III. Sergeant Major Chandler is on hand today to discuss and take your questions about matters affecting the U.S. Army's enlisted corps, to include enlistments, benefits, drawdowns, or entitlements and benefits, drawdown, and the Army profession, as well as other related topics. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sergeant Major Chandler if you'd like to make some opening statements.
Thanks, Sergeant Sweetenham. I apologize. First of all, I've got a pretty good cold going right now, so if I sound a little scratchy or nasally, it's because of the fact that I have a cold, and I hope you'd bear with me. It's a great afternoon to be with you, even if it is raining here in Washington, D.C., but it's an opportunity for me to talk with you, and I truly appreciate you taking the time and also your flexibility with the adjustment we had to make in the schedule. You know, for the last 9 months or so, I've spent a lot of time traveling around the Army and around the world talking with soldiers and families, and they have a lot of concerns on their mind, and I see myself as a scout where I go out and find our soldiers and hear what their concerns are and bring that information back to the department and specifically my boss, the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Odierno, and share with him what they've had to say. You know, we do have an amazing Army, even after 10 years of protracted combat and multiple deployments. When you think about multiple deployments, the 101st Airborne, which is a unit I was just with last week, is scheduled to go on their 6th deployment now. And when you think about that in context, that is an amazing fact and a testament to the resilience to our soldiers and their families. So I am honored to serve them as their Sergeant Major. Right now we're at a crossroads in our Army. You know, we've got continuing responsibilities overseas with our war in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places around the globe. And at the same time, we're wrestling with reduced budgets and what that impact will be upon our Army and the drawdown in the force and how we're going to manage that transition over the next several years. So I'm open to any questions you may have on any of the topics or anything else that may be on your mind. And truthfully, thank you for taking the opportunity to be with me.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Major. We'll go ahead and start with Dale Kissinger from Military Avenue.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Major, for taking the time this afternoon. This is Dale Kissinger, Military Avenue. Recent passage of the VOW Act for veterans hiring preferences by Congress, and I talked to Sears VP yesterday about their program to hire veterans, which is a great one, by the way. But what is the Army doing for, a drawdown for helping the veterans? And I'm sure the soldiers right now are very concerned about their employment opportunities in this economy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the Secretary of the Army just recently put out an Army directive that transition for soldiers will start in within a year of their separation from the service. We're obviously partnered with both the Department of Defense, the Veterans Affairs, Department of Labor, and the White House on a unified and synchronized approach to transitioning our soldiers and veterans out of the Army and into the civilian workplace. We have huge concerns right now with unemployment for those who have served, much higher average than with our with our civilian counterparts. So we're looking at how we can make changes and adjustments within the Army Career and Alumni Program to better serve our soldiers in what we now are calling our Transition Assistance Program. The largest challenge that we are faced with is really linking up the jobs availability with the soldier. And there are many different ways to try and achieve that. and each of them has a bill associated with it. So in direction, obviously by the direction of the Secretary, and then obviously the directives from Congress and the President on looking at this program, we're going to do the best we possibly can.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome, Dale. Thanks, and Dale, thanks again for taking the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. We'll move on to Todd Lopez, our news.
Sir, how will the Army manage this drawdown, cutting so many soldiers? What criteria will you use?
Well, obviously we're going to manage this through basically about 4 different ways. Number one, we're going to bring less people in the Army. And that's important to understand that even as upwards of 4 years ago, we were bringing close to 80,000 soldiers a year into the service. And this year our goal is about 58,000. So we're going to bring less people into the Army. Number two, we're going to retain less people. So less people are going to be afforded the privilege to serve in our Army. And we'll talk about that in a second. The third thing is a byproduct of adjusting retention control points for sergeants and staff sergeants will mean probably anywhere from 1,500 to 1,800 sergeants and staff sergeants will end up leaving the Army earlier than they may have anticipated. That was not because of the drawdown, but because of adjustments we made in our leader development strategy about when people would get promoted. And those had the longest tenure in grade that was allowed. So we had to make some adjustments, and some folks, unfortunately, will have to leave. And the last thing that we'll be doing, probably starting next fiscal year, is some selective early retirement boards for Sergeant First Class, Master Sergeants, and Sergeants Major. And we'll look at whether or not soldiers in that rank have any future potential, and whether or not their MOS or career management field may be overstrength, and we'll tell them that it's time to retire now instead of waiting until their mandatory retirement date. The retention piece is the one that is going to affect a lot of folks in our Army. All of this will affect everyone in our Army, and that's important to understand. Every single person will be affected by this drawdown. Whether you're an officer, a soldier, an NCO, everybody will be touched in some capacity. But for our soldiers that are eligible to re-enlist, the standard is going to be excellence. And so we're looking for the best and the brightest in our Army that we're going to offer the privilege of service. And it's really a two-part decision. You have to, number one, be committed to serve the Army, and then you have to be committed to serve the Army in the capacity that we need you in. So there are going to be some soldiers that may be afforded the privilege to stay in service, but they may have to choose to serve in a different MOS. And for some folks, that may not be palatable. So finding the best folks, making sure that we've identified them through counseling, through other tools similar to the same way that we promote people, military education, civilian education, duty performance, your desire to seek greater responsibility and other skills are all going to be part of that equation that commanders will make to decide whether or not someone's going to be able to stay. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Sergeant Major.
Sure.
Hear from Leo Shane, Stars and Stripes.
Hey, Leo Shane over at Stars and Stripes here. You doing all right?
Other than my cough, I'm fine, Leo. Go right ahead.
Just a quick follow-up on that retention piece that you just said. What do you have a number that we're going to see reduced to?
Well, right now we're going to reduce the size of the Army by at least 50,000 soldiers. And as you well know, the Army size is dictated by a budget and a ceiling limit on authorization. So combined, those two things will end up saying this is the Army that we can afford. What it is that Congress sets as an authorization level and how much money that we're given in order to man, equip, and train the Army will determine how big of an Army we'll have.
Okay, but
that number is about 50,000 less than what we have today.
And that's overall. So, but you'll get some of that through the lower recruitment as well, correct?
Well, yes, obviously it's a combination of all of those things that will reduce our Army by about 50,000 people.
Okay. And I had just a more general question for you. We've had a lot of conversations about budgets, and military pay has been threatened by a couple of the budget fights over the course of the year. In your travels, I'm just wondering, pay and benefits, what you're hearing from folks, what their concerns are, if they largely have stayed away from some of the politics here, or if they've been concerned about what they're seeing happen back home.
Well, no, absolutely. Soldiers are very concerned about the budget and its impact on them and their quality of life and the quality of life for their families. It's probably one of the largest questions that I hear, or the most numerous question I hear. And really, the issue that draws the most interest off the bat is retirement and changes to the retirement system and whether they're going to affect those that are currently in uniform or those that may not be in uniform. Or those that have already retired. And this is really an issue of trust, I believe, between the American people and the American soldier. Less than 1% of Americans choose to serve or are able to serve in our Army. And over the last 10 years, that very small population has done so many things for our nation that I'm sure we'll find it very difficult to Okay. So
when they're talking about
the bottom line is this: the president, through the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of the Army and the Chief and myself, are committed to maintaining the current system of retirement for those that currently serve. And I meet with members of Congress. I will meet with some of them tomorrow. And I've yet to find a member of Congress who said that we are willing to cut retirement for those currently in uniform, because they all understand the commitment and the sacrifice that very small population of folks have paid to our nation.
And just so I'm clear, when you're hearing from folks with those concerns, they're saying they want to keep the current retirement system. They want to make sure
Absolutely.
that what they signed up for. Okay.
All right, they want to. It's that trust issue. I signed up for this in return for my service. Then I'm compensated with this benefit package, and one of that happens to be retirement, and they want to keep that current plan.
Great, thanks.
I'm going to have to stop the questions because I've got to get up to a meeting with the secretary that's unplanned. So I'm going to have to cut out of here. But I would really appreciate it if we could reschedule something in the very short future to follow up with these folks if they're interested. Because, again, it's a matter of commitment and trust. Thanks again, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Sergeant Major is going to make his way out to a meeting. In the meantime, I want to let everybody know that we appreciate your questions and your participation today. If you have additional follow-up questions, please email them to me. My email address is Dale, DALE.Sweetnam, SWEETNAM @us.army.mil, and I can relay those messages on to the Sergeant Major and get you those answers. Also, I want to make sure that everyone knows that today's program, the 15 minutes length of it, will be available online on Divids, where you can be able to access the audio file so you can get some direct quotes and so forth. So again, apologize this was cut short, and also apologize that we had to delay the beginning of this by a half an hour, but Sergeant Major is being pulled in many different directions, so I appreciate your patience and your participation. If you have any additional questions of me?
No, should be all good.
All right, excellent. Again, thank you very much for your patience and participation, and email me if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.